All right, today we are diving into the absolutely wild story of Sun Ce. He's one of the most brilliant, charismatic, and ultimately tragic figures from China's legendary Three Kingdoms era. His life was just this incredible flash of lightning that carved out a whole empire, only to be snuffed out way, way too soon.
You know, it's a question you could ask about so many great leaders, right? That unstoppable drive, that fierce pride, that absolute belief in yourself that helps you win. What happens when it just pushes you one step too far?
For Sun Ce, this wasn't some deep philosophical question. It was his life. It was the central, kind of tragic paradox that led him to almost unbelievable success, and then to a shocking, violent, and just way too early end.
26. Let that sink in for a second. That's how old he was when he died. To give you some perspective, he had already conquered a kingdom that would become one of the famous Three Kingdoms, all before most of us have even figured out our careers. It's just mind-blowing. His rivals and allies gave him a nickname that just captured his whole vibe perfectly, the Little Conqueror. And this wasn't just some casual nickname, okay? It was a direct comparison to Shang Yu, who is basically one of the most ferocious, almost mythical warriors in all of Chinese history. Sun Ce earned that name with every single victory.
So how in the world did he do so much so fast? Well, his story doesn't start from a place of power, not at all. It starts from a place of real weakness. His famous dad, Sun Jian, the tiger of Jiangdong, was killed in battle, and that left a 17-year-old Sun Ce, basically an orphan, with no land, forced to serve another, bigger warlord.
But instead of just accepting that fate, he came up with one of the greatest gambles in history. He looked around and saw the Jiangdong region was super rich, but totally divided and leaderless. So he goes to his boss, this warlord Yuan Shu, and says, "Hey, give me some troops, I'll conquer it for you." And for collateral, get this, he offers up the Imperial Seal, a priceless artifact, a symbol of the emperor's legitimacy that his dad had found. He was literally betting his entire family legacy on a long shot, just for the chance to build something of his own. The guts on this kid.
And what happened next? It was absolutely breathtaking. With just a handful of borrowed soldiers, he crossed the massive Yangtze River and, in less than 5 years, just tore through the region in a whirlwind campaign. He crushed warlord after warlord, bandit king after bandit king. He was expanding his territory at a speed that just stunned everybody.
And you know who said this? This wasn't a friend or some hype man. This was Cao Cao himself, the most powerful, most cunning warlord in the entire north. Even while he was busy fighting his own massive wars, he had to look south and admit, wow, okay, this lion cub is a serious problem.
So, at the peak of his power, Sun Ce wasn't just a military genius. He was a super complex guy. He could be this incredibly inspiring hero one minute and a terrifying, ruthless despot the next. And that duality, that's really the key to understanding who he was.
So let's look at the hero side. There's this amazing story where he fought a fierce duel with an enemy general named Taishi. They were totally evenly matched. Later, Taishi gets captured, and everyone's expecting, a public execution. But instead, Sun Ce walks right up, unties the ropes with his own hands, and offers his greatest enemy a top job in his army. Can you imagine? This one act of unbelievable generosity won him the undying loyalty of one of the best warriors of that era.
But then, there was the tyrant. He saw this beloved Taoist priest, Yu Ji, who had this massive following among the common people, as a threat to his absolute power. He claimed Yu Ji was bewitching everybody. And ignoring desperate pleas from his top advisors and even his own mom, Sun Ce had the holy man dragged out and beheaded in public. It sent shockwaves through the region. And that's the whole paradox, right? Both of these men were Sun Ce. He was the charismatic leader who could win over his greatest enemy. And he was the ruthless tyrant who would execute a holy man without a second thought. He was a man of extremes. And you just knew these two sides of his personality were on a collision course.
And, well, that collision was bound to happen. Inevitably, this all leads to the final, tragic act of his life. The very same traits that launched his incredible rise, his boldness, his impatience, his unshakable belief that he was invincible, those would become the very architects of his downfall.
What's so chilling is that his enemies could totally see it coming. Miles and miles away in the north, Cao Cao's top strategist, this genius named Guo Jia, made this terrifyingly accurate prediction.
He saw that Sun Ce's recklessness, his habit of riding around without a proper guard, made him a sitting duck. It was a fatal flaw, clear as day to his rivals.
And that is exactly what happened. Sun Ce had earlier executed a local official. So one day, he's out hunting, and his horse is so fast, he just leaves his entire bodyguard in the dust. He's totally alone, totally exposed. And that's when the official's loyal followers, who were hiding in the woods just waiting for a chance like this, jumped out and ambushed him.
Now, he was hit in the face with a poisoned arrow, but he actually survived the attack. The doctor's orders were simple: stay calm, rest for 100 days, and you'll live. But Sun Ce, the handsome little conqueror, he just couldn't handle it. He looked in a mirror and saw his face all disfigured and his pride just shattered. He flew into a volcanic rage, smashing tables, yelling, and all that violent fury literally caused his wounds to burst open. So in the end, it wasn't the assassin's arrow that killed him. It was his own unconquerable temper.
But here's the thing. His story doesn't just end in failure. In his final moments, Sun Ce had this moment of perfect, crystal-clear thinking. His own personal tragedy, in a way, became the foundation for his family's greatest triumph.
On his deathbed, he calls for his younger brother's son Quan, and he says something that shows just incredible self-awareness. He tells him, look, when it comes to raising armies and fighting for control of the whole map, you're no match for me. But when it comes to picking the right people, governing wisely, and defending what we've built, well, I'm no match for you. In his last moments, he knew exactly what their new kingdom needed to survive, and he knew it wasn't him. And he was totally right. Sun Ce was the conqueror, the trailblazer. He was the one who forged the kingdom from nothing and put together this all-star team of generals and advisors. But it was his brother, Sun Quan, who took that foundation, ruled for decades, and eventually became the first emperor of the state of Eastern Wu. Sun Ce's 5 years of brutal, brilliant war created a dynasty that would last for half a century. So that leaves us with this final, massive question. Was his death just the inevitable price he had to pay for his own reckless pride? Or, by recognizing his own flaws at the very end and passing the torch, did his death actually become the final, necessary sacrifice that guaranteed the survival of everything he had fought so hard to create? It's something to think about.